NetRootsRadio.com.
Okay. Tuesday edition of the After Show. Got Wake and Justice with you. Wake over here on the East Coast.
And Justice over here on the West Coast of the contiguous United States of America. It is Red Sky at Morning Tuesdays here on the After Show. And that's what we call it. Not only because we can, and we will, but also there's a red sky somewhere in the world. And take warning on that. At some point, we're all sailors. Hey, Wink, how you doing?
Not bad, not bad. What is it? 63, a little on the cool side this morning. It's not really going to go up. It's only going to go up about 68, 69, so it's going to be a cooler day today. But it's partly sunny. It looks pretty nice out there, really, other than the cooler temps. But, you're going to get some of those too. So, I hate it, but that's the way it is. Reminder to get in the chat. Just go to NetRootsRadio.com. Scroll down the bottom of the page, and on the right-hand side of the bottom of the page, there is a link to the chat. So click that. Join us there.
And as we like to remind folks, subliminally located just to the leftish of the chat link are the contribute donate buttons. And I don't know, you can do it without thinking, or you can do it because you want to keep Resistance Radio alive and beaming.
Yes.
Not only worldwide, but everywhere. And what is everywhere? I don't know. Well, here along the banks of the I should also mention very quickly, you can also get after show pods by way of the raw data file. Comes up shortly after the end of the show, and we'll put that up on Spreaker. And then the perfected daily file, the PDF, will then be available a little later than that. And that comes on Podbean, iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, and avoid the one with the heart. I mean, if that's the only one you got, I understand. But, Okay, here along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon, it is currently 60 degrees. We're going to be much cooler today. Wink, only 90. Yes, we got up to 97 yesterday. So 90's good. I don't know. I think maybe I might be able that might be I don't know. Get out and work weather. I don't know.
Might need a sweater. To.
Oh, might. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, for the UV possibility. I don't know. We will be partly cloudy. Let's see. Winds are going to be out of the northwest. Is that right? I got to scroll down here quickly. Is that correct? Winds. Oh, okay. Out of the northwest at 10 to 15 miles per hour, though it's calm right now. And it's clear, though we're supposed to be getting partly cloudy. So I'll take that. And let's see. I guess we'll be hovering between 87 and 91 for the next few days. Oh, but then by the weekend, Saturday projected at 101, Sunday 105.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
You're looking at Phoenix weather right there.
Do not call it. Do not call it climate change. Just don't do it. do it. Well. Weather from around the world, Wink, is brought to us by people's weather stations that they purchased and they plugged into the ground. And when I say plug, they like out of a stake and they put it right in the ground and then wirelessly upload the information. And this is how we get weather from around the world. London right now. London is 92 and clear.
Wow.
Paris is 95 and clear. This is around the time that people start thinking, I'm getting out of Paris. Let's go to, a lot of people want to go to the south of France. But people in the know, get up there along the English Channel. It's cooler there. It's hot, but cooler. Okay, so Paris is 95 and clear. Rome is 83 and clear. Kiev is 84 and clear. Kabul is 89 and clear. I always like to mention that with a pretty big chance of sporadic bombing raids.
Yeah. You say it's a perfect day for that.
Right, perfect day. Hong Kong is 78 with thunderstorms. Tokyo is 75 and mostly cloudy. Sydney is, that's in Australia if you don't know. Sydney is 55 and partly cloudy. San Francisco, 60 and partly cloudy. And New York is 85 and clear. Clear. Define clear. Actually, you can see for quite a ways when it's a clear day in New York and you're up at height. Oh my God! Jeez. You can almost see to I don't know.
You can see far. The Catskills. I mean,
there you go.
You can almost get there.
You can almost, Well. We have a lot going on today. We will be visiting with Chris Reeves.
Yeah.
I think that we figured out whatever the tech issue that prevented us from doing it last week, and we're keeping our fingers crossed because, as we say, sometimes what we define as an act of God is like what the service provider says. Yeah. And then there are actual acts of God that are beyond all human understanding. And so the only thing left is, it must be God. So we do have a lot going on today. We will be speaking about the Senate Democrats seizing the floor last night. You heard about that, right, Wink?
No, I didn't catch that.
Oh, my God. Well, the Senate Democrats seized the floor last night in protest, and they had like a what some media were calling a talk-a-thon.
Yeah.
Talk-a-thon.
Yeah.
And Jerry Lewis is here for the talk-a-thon. Nah, nice lady. No, it wasn't a talk-a-thon, but they talked. And in protest to McConnell's supposed secrecy bill. Secrecy for national security? I don't know. It's to keep the population of the United States knowing what this bill is. Otherwise, there's going to be massive revolt. Of course, it's national security. I got attacked by Bernie bots because I insulted Jill Stein. Jill Stein people didn't attack me, but Bernie bots did. I can't figure it out. It's almost like they're from Macedonia.
Yeah, some of the Bernie bots are pretty aggressive. Let's say, yeah.
Well, the responses are so voluminous and also so similar that it makes you think there's an algorithm that triggers it. So, but I don't know. I don't mean to be provocative. I just simply said that due to all, arguments that Jill Stein is a Russian dupe, she is not a Russian dupe. She's a full-blown Russian operative.
Yeah. And
that just got them all, angry.
Yeah.
And it wasn't Jill Stein. Nobody from the Greens, said word one, but, and it's all the argument is that, is that all they got? Hillary lost because the Russians. I go, well, actually, that's not what I'm implying. What I'm implying is that, what we call the Russia story is I think, a catch-all phrase for any number of transgressions that were absolutely illegal that we knew about before this mobster was elected. Or, I don't know, whatever it was called that put him in office.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's nothing secret. I mean, it's as if, all history has been suspended. What we already know before this guy ever ran for office is now discarded. It never happened. We're talking about Russian contacts from the late 80s. Are you telling me there's no Russian contacts now? The guy's got business interests there in any number of fashions. He's got Russians coming out of his left ear, and that's a pretty big ear, I think. And they own these multi-million-dollar condos, flats. I mean, we're not talking palatial either. I mean, what, 1,500 square feet? Yeah, that's like a suburban house. Yeah. Yep. But, it's like a flat and some high-rise maybe. But I'm just saying, that doesn't exist. He hasn't already paid a fine for laundering money out of one of his casinos. And how was that money laundered? Yeah, Russian mobster money. Come on. It's all on record. So it makes me think that there's a lot of Macedonia kids who don't really know about what the heck is going on. All right, I'm sorry. I don't mean to rant, but it was just telling. Or as I put up a picture of Artie Johnson from Laugh-In. The very interesting. Very, very interesting. Okay. These are the issues we will be attending to today because we cannot dally.
Right.
Whether we're Salvador or other. Karen Handel, you know who she is, yeah, Georgia 6, is pretty damn proud of her record of keeping people from voting.
Right.
God, she's a nasty person. Ooh. The response by many Republicans and the right-wing media to the Virginia shooting underscores their white supremacist and misogynist values. Oh, sounds like a little deconstructing here. We'll get into that. And this is interesting. A secret cache of Nazi loot with possible ties to infamous Nazi Dr. Joseph Mengele, from the Boys of Brazil, is seized in Argentina. Not Brazil, but Argentina. Yeah, lots of Nazis got to Argentina. Then they went to Brazil. Ooh. And on the last half, of course, I mentioned earlier that we will be visiting with Chris Reeves, also known as Tom Servo 433, in a very affectionate manner because of historical legacy purposes. But we're going to have a discussion today on those Senate Democrats seizing the floor last night to protest McConnell's health care bill secrecy. Today's other special election, the one in Frank Underwood's district in South Carolina. Well, that one also matters. And we're going to have a little discussion about what Republicans get wrong about the social safety net. All that, plus the Connect, Unite, Act Daily Coast community calendar. And there's always more on the after show. More than we can pack in, but we try. And we do that 5 days a week. We do that with Wink over there on the East Coast. I'm Justice over here on the West Coast, and we do this, 5 days a week for an hour-ish in this particular specific and very peculiar tear in the fabric of space-time. Because, who loves your baby? Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Remember what the canon is in quantum mechanics, Wink. If you can measure it, it exists.
There you go.
And it doesn't exist until we can measure it. That's the inference that they never tell you. Okay, yeah. Chaw on that for a little bit. I'd like to bring that up here, to some of the more, shall we say, low information folk.
Yeah, who aren't listening to us, by the way. But yeah, still work.
No, I'm talking about when I'm walking in town, and I like to say, so, I like to say, about all possible outcomes. I don't ever have those conversations with these people. Are you kidding me? All right. proud of her record, Karen Handel. There's always something going on in the background. I can't always keep up on it. Boy, when you open up some of these pages, then they start doing all these like dialogue boxes, like, let us have your email. And I'm like, what? Not now. There is no, I apologize here. This is by Ali Bogan from Rewire. There is no evidence of widespread voter fraud, but that hasn't stopped the Republican candidate for U.S. Congress in Georgia's 6th District, former Georgia Secretary of State Karen Handel, from backing measures suppressing access to the ballot box based on a myth. Yep. When a U.S. District Judge required in early May that Georgia extend its voter registration deadline for the looming 6th District special election, Handel snapped into action. This is going to boil your blood, Handel wrote of the decision in an email to supporters. Just hours ago, the Democrats won their lawsuit to extend voter registration in Georgia before our election. I think she means her appointment. Here, let us knight you. She continued, this lawsuit should be seen for exactly what it is, a partisan attempt to change the rules in the middle of an election for a nakedly partisan outcome. Friend, I need your immediate support to fight back against the Democrats' latest trick to deceive this election. What? They have a special election and said, okay, well, we have a pretty tight time frame here, and people need to know about the special election, so they're going to need a little bit extra time to make sure they're registered to vote, especially since you have put up so many roadblocks in which just people who are registered to vote have to go through some other hurdles to be able to vote. That's what she was against, is that you found a way to actually vote in spite of the hurdles that I put up? How dare you? What kind of society is this coming to?
Exactly.
This wasn't the first time Handel supported efforts that would restrict the vote. She worked against expanding access to the ballot box during her tenure as Secretary of State from 2007 to 2010. In her 2012 book, Planned Bullyhood, the truth behind the headlines about the Planned Parenthood funding battle with Susan G. Komen for the cure, Handel touted her work restricting access to the polls in Georgia and called the state's voter identification law one of her office's most important accomplishments. We kept hundreds of thousands of darkies from going to the polls. Whoopee! Ain't that a Georgia peach? And yes, it is. In the book, she took issue with those who said that voter ID and so-called stand-your-ground laws were racist, and criticized groups such as Color of Change that have targeted the American Legislative Exchange Council. You know, ALEC, we talk about them a lot. And we know them, of course, as a Koch-backed organization known for churning out pro-corporate model legislation for, among other things, its role in the wave of voter ID restrictions pushed from 2009 to 2012. Now, what could have happened in 2009 to 2012 that would, motivate this kind of behavior? Like I said, what is this society coming to? Well, McConnell warned us, Wink. McConnell warned us that we vote in a black president, there will be consequences. And this health care bill going through secret right now, the one to overturn what the black president signed into law, he warned us. Well, let's not get too much into an aside. Requiring voters to show a photo ID is common sense voter integrity program, Handel wrote. Though a 2012 Atlanta Journal-Constitution report found that election officials in the state, quote, could not point to a single case of ballot fraud that law was to prevent. And then when there are people who vote twice, why is it always Republicans? I know it's not always. There's no absolutes, but you know what I mean. Odd. Of course, I will now be inundated with instances where, a welfare mom, right, in Baltimore voted twice or something. Okay. And it'll turn out that it actually wasn't, voting twice, but mom and daughter have the same sort of initial somewhere. Well, there is no doubt that voters of color have been targeted by voter identification laws. In Texas, a federal judge ruled against the state's voter ID law in April, finding that the law intentionally discriminated against black and Latino voters. And Texas was saying, well, yeah, who do you think we are?
Yeah.
We that happened by accident? Come on, we're Texans. We do everything big. Come on. It's their legacy. According to the Brennan Center for Justice, as many as 11% of eligible voters in the nation do not have government-issued photo identification, and that number is even higher for seniors, people of color, people with disabilities, low-income voters, and students. And I wonder why that is, because wasn't it almost from the very beginning of our country, we had this ethos that went like this, Wink. We don't live in a country that says, show me your papers.
Yeah.
And then suddenly we have to show our papers. Okay. And who is it that says we have to show our papers? The ones that say, oh, yeah, we're all for the historical significance of what made this country proud. Until Handel's leadership, Georgia moved to purge voter registration rolls with a voter verification process that, according to a lawsuit filed against Handel in 2008, included a citizenship test triggering new procedures regarding absentee voting and voter challenge hearings. As part of that purge, more than 50,000 people in the state were flagged, and more than 4,500 of them were flagged for questions of citizenship. Well, turns out that they were all citizens. This is like how many jelly beans are in this jar, and then you can vote. Sorry, you guessed wrong. Oh, boy. And, of course, she has tight connections with Chris Kobach, Kansas Secretary of State, the Gestapo guy trying to, just round them all up and send them somewhere else. We don't care where, just away from here. All right. People voting? How terrible. What is this society coming to? Okay, what happened to Steve Scalise is terrible, wrong, and should never happen. Joyanne Reed is taking heat because she simply just reminded folks who Steve Scalise is. Now, we don't change, our politics, from the end of a gun. That's for Maoists and anarchists and those types, right? We don't do that. But so no matter how onerous a political opponent is, that's not how we do it, and there's no condoning it. But we also can't deny the fact that suddenly, if someone has been the victim of that they're then raised into angelic sainthood. And all of their transgressions are suddenly, they've disappeared. And we need to remind our folks that Steve Scalise is, just looks better without the hood, I think is what people say.
Yeah.
And this is an article by Stephen Rosenfeld out of Alternet. The biggest fallout from last week's shooting of House Republicans at a baseball practice in Virginia that grievously injured Representative Steve Scalise of Louisiana and 3 others is not the infantile war of words from right-wingers blaming Democrats. It is from reactionary white men imposing their right to own and use guns on the rest of America. The Republican Party is the party of an aging, shrinking, white-dominated America. Oh, I'm sorry. All of a sudden, my little scroller thing went a little haywire. Nearly 2/3 of America's gun owners voted for Trump. And that was reported by the Washington Post. Citing several national surveys that found 49% of gun owners were Republican, 32% were independent, and 23% were Democrats. The strength and reliability of association between owning a gun and voting Republican is impressive, the report said. Across 11 presidential contests, gun ownership was more strongly linked to vote choice than such well-known predictors as gender, age, and education. Meanwhile, other research has shown that it is women and non-whites who are most deeply hurt by gun violence. Feature, not a bug.
Right.
Reflecting the unsavory reality that GOP's white male-dominated obsession with defending guns does not end up harming people like them nearly as much. The facts are appalling. Gun violence is an ongoing epidemic with 30,000 deaths annually, more than 80 daily, a figure that has not changed in years, while the most heart-wrenching incidents make national news, like 4 toddlers dying after playing with guns they found. Most gun deaths do not, despite reports by gun control advocates like the Violence Policy Center. You know, Kagro, David, has a very comprehensive gun fail that's been going on for quite a while.
Yep.
Mostly deals with kids.
Right.
But it's under a larger aegis as well. And the article goes on to explain, you know, the usual suspects like Limbaugh, you know, marketing on, you know, I don't know, the fear that white males are going to like lose their power or something. I don't know. Oh no, there's going to be more of them than us. Oh no, can't have that happen. Let's shoot them. Okay, do it. So, like all things political, people have always have a public reason and real reason for the positions they take. When it comes to the right wing's ongoing defense of guns, it is not just defending Republicans' shrinking aging white base against a diversifying nation and its evolving values. It's also defending the majority of gun owners in America who often are not victims of gun violence. It reveals that right-wingers and their representatives in Congress will once again put power party, white supremacy, and misogyny ahead of country, even when their own members are targeted. Well, look, if they were going to hop to when 26 first graders got slaughtered, they could care less about one of their own. Oh, just leave him. He'll, you know... It's the way he would have wanted it. Yeah. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. That's what they say. Okay, we got a couple of minutes before we get to our break, so I'll get through this real quick. This is out of Newsweek. And Sofia Lato Persia. A police operation in Argentina has seized a collection of original Nazi artifacts believed to be the country's biggest haul of its kind to date. Argentinian police and Interpol raided the house of an art collector in the north of Argentina's capital, Buenos Aires, as part of the Operation Near East. They found a secret passageway to a room filled with Nazi and archaeological artifacts concealed behind a bookshelf. These need to be in the Holocaust Museum. And they will be, indeed. The man had stored around 75 objects bearing swastikas and other Nazi symbols in the secret room, including busts, pictures of Adolf Hitler, puzzle games for children, daggers, and several medical instruments that were used to measure a person's anatomical fit to the standards of the so-called Aryan race. High forehead, well-placed separation of their eyes, square jaw. As part of the operation, the police also seized a number of rare artifacts from Asia and ancient Egypt, including a 3,000-year-old animal mummy they said that were likely to be sold on the black market. And I actually misspoke there. 3,000-year-old animal mummies. Well, you got to fund your Nazi loot cache, don't you? Yes, you do. Police raided the house on June 8th, but the Minister of National Security, Patricia Bullrich, held a press conference Monday afternoon to reveal details of the case. Said that the police had enlisted the help of historians to investigate how and when the collection entered the country. The minister also said that at the end of the investigation, the artifacts will be donated to the Holocaust Museum in Buenos Aires. Nazi Dr. Joseph Mengele, the so-called Angel of Death, had also fled to Buenos Aires, as well as Adolf Eichmann and others, but avoided capture, unlike Eichmann, who was captured near Buenos Aires by Israeli secret services in 1960 and then brought to stand trial in Jerusalem, where he was then sentenced to death by hanging in 1962. Mengele avoided capture by escaping first to Paraguay and then to Brazil, where he died in 1979, and then, the movie Boys of Brazil. You got to check that one out.
Well.
Now, the Argentinian police did not say which high-ranking official may have been the owner of the collection, but the medical instruments found inevitably brought Joseph Mengele to mind. We know history. We know the terrible experiments carried out by Joseph Mengele. When I see these objects, I see the ignominy of this terrible time in human history that has caused so much damage and so much pain. Alberto Indiz, vice president of the delegation of Argentinian Israeli associations, said last week by the authorities to showcase the result of the operation. Okay. Said that in a video too, so the authorities had. Okay, let's get to our Gem Hightower break. We'll come back, go through the Connect Unite Act Daily Codes community calendar, and then a discussion with Chris Reeves. You are listening to the After Show on Networks Radio with Wink and Justice, and we will be right back.
Good news, people. At last, congressional Democrats have gotten a clue, grown some spine, and are beginning to act like Democrats. In particular, a majority of Dems in the U.S. House are responding to the rising public demand that decent health care be treated as a right for everyone, rather than being rationed by profiteering insurance conglomerates. Nearly 6 of 10 in the House have now signed on to Representative John Conyers' Medicare for All bill, which is being carried in the Senate by Bernie Sanders. So, hallelujah, progress. Yes, but there are many speed bumps to overcome before the Democratic Party gets onto the moral high road of politics. Representative Nancy Pelosi, for one. When the leader of House Democrats was asked if the party should make health care for all a major issue in Congress and in the 2018 elections, she replied with a flat no. Basically, Pelosi says the American people aren't ready for it, by which she really means that the narrow slice of the public that inhabits her world, health industry executives, lobbyists, and campaign donors, aren't ready. Meanwhile, a good 60% of regular Americans are damn sure ready, telling pollsters that our government has a responsibility to ensure that everyone gets the care they need. Let's be blunt. When it comes to the fiery leadership that America's grassroots people want and need, the Democratic Party establishment is weaker than Canadian hot sauce. When you've got 60% of your party's rank-and-file congressional members ready to go, and 60% of the public is also ready to go, it's time to go. The National Party's leadership must get going on health care for all, or the leadership itself must go. This is Jim Hightower saying, to help push both the party and the health care for all issue forward, go to nationalnursesunited.org.
Need an antidote to the progressive blues? Want some good news about how grassroots folks are rebelling against the corporate powers and winning? Well, here's an easy-to-swallow pill for you, the Hightower Lowdown. Hightower's monthly newsletter will give you the lowdown, even as it lifts you up. It's 4 pages a month, jam-packed with facts you can use, actions you can take, and Jim's own Texas humor, all for only $15 a year. To become a lowdowner, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
Okay, we're back.
And indeed, we are back, and thank you for sticking with us. This is the After Show with Wink and Justice. Justice here along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the West Coast. Wink is in upstate New York 21 on the East Coast. Our crew, Chris Reeves is in the vast plains of the Midwest, and our crew are the ethereal creatures who reside in the cloud whose advanced intergalactic technical abilities allow Netroots Radio, and thus by extension the After Show, to span the globe, the solar system, and for our purposes of hyperbole, beyond. Woo-hoo.
Yeah.
Filaments don't have to be made of fiber. They can be on like little laser filaments, light. Okay.
Yeah. There you go.
I want wireless out in the ether. All right. All right. Today's Connect, Unite, Act Daily Codes Community Diary is facilitated by the fantastic cartoonist Eric Lewis, and he opens up with the question: vintage T-shirts. Like, do you have any old vintage rock and roll T-shirts, Wink? I bet you do.
I used to have them, but they've since faded away, and long gone. I haven't had any really in 15, 20 years, but I used back in the day. Yeah. Yep.
See, my problem is that I used to wear these shirts all the time, and so they, like I had 3 shirts from Cottonmouth, back in the day, the group that, because we sold, our albums and singles and T-shirts and bumper stickers and all that at all of our shows. And so I had 3 of those shirts, and they eventually just disintegrated because you had to wash them and stuff. And I, instead of thinking, I better put these in plastic, seal them up.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
And that's the thing I do with the Netroots Nation T-shirts now, too. I keep wearing them, and, there's no way to replace them unless there's extra supply on hand that you can dip into for a cost. We'll have to check out Amazon for that. Okay, new groups forming. Wisconsin Cossacks have been forming their groups, so Cosmail Chris the Call of Dem to become a member of Wisconsin Cossacks. Today is Tuesday the 20th, and San Francisco Cossacks are rolling out the orange carpet for D'Artagnan, who is visiting the Bay Area, and they're going to meet at the Beach Chalet Brewery and Restaurant, 1000 Great Highway in San Francisco. Happy hour is 5 p.m. West Coast time. Dinner reservations have been made for 6, and I guess you could Cosmail Navajo. She might be able to fit you in.
Yeah.
Beach Chalet is a wonderful little place, especially, even if it's foggy out there on the beach. You'll see. Epic Glacier National Park meetup number 3, June 30th through July 2nd. Thinking Fella and Ojibwa have been organizing that quite extensive itinerary. Get a hold of them if you'd like to participate. And the annual Daily Coast Cheers and Jeers annual dinner, Wednesday, August 9th at Netroots Nation in Atlanta, 5:30 p.m. White Oak Kitchen and Cocktails, 270 Peachtree Street, Atlanta, Georgia. They have a kitchen and cocktails, but no bar and no like restaurant tables to sit at. You got to stand in the kitchen and drink your cocktails. No, it's a wink. It's a white table place, white tablecloth place. Just watch.
Right.
Okay, so August 9th, 5:30 p.m., Cozumel Navajo to RSVP for that. And Daily Coast Asheville will be meeting up for their Mount Mitchell State Park event, Saturday, August 12th. And get a hold of Randalt to take part in that. And that is your Connect, Unite, Act Daily Coast community calendar for the 20th of June, which is, right before we turn into summer.
Yep.
Of 2017. Okay, without further ado, we have Chris Reeves, who is in massive transit mode right now.
Yep.
And just for a few hours, he's in a stable platform. And then he will be off beaming aboard somewhere on the Starship Enterprise as they transport to elsewhere for activist endeavors. So with that wordy introduction, welcome, Chris. Sorry we messed up last week. We figured out whatever technical thing it was, or at least the crew did, and we apologize for last week. But thank you for visiting with us this week. Yeah, they do.
Hey, those things happen, I mean, don't worry about it.
Well,
Skype. Skype.
Let's begin with the Democratic Senate seizing the floor last night. Boy, McConnell, I just loved it. Is there any objection to McConnell? I object. But let's talk a little bit about that. And is it a good strategy? Is this a filibuster? I hate the term talk-a-thon. It's like you expect like stuffed bunnies to be dancing a jig or something.
Right. Well, here's the interesting thing. This really is technically not a filibuster because nobody has seen the legislation, and nothing has actually been put forward. So there's no bill pending to filibuster. What this is really an attempt to call attention to the fact that people have been completely shut out of the process of legislation. To give you an idea of how messed up the situation is at the moment, when the Patriot Act passed, which was at the height of 911 concerns and U.S. domestic fear and all of that kind of stuff, we still had a public hearing over the Patriot Act. But there will be no public hearing, none at all, over the version of the AHCA that is being debated by the Senate. So what this is to call attention to the fact that, hey, the public has been completely shut out of discussion of a bill that impacts almost a little bit more than 1/6 of the U.S. economy. And that's just silly. Yeah.
Let me ask. I don't know if this is being a devil's advocate, but I always like to cover all the bases, try to figure out what people's motivations are, so that you can figure them out and figure out how to deal with them. Now, is Mitch McConnell's politics so cynical that he feels that he could ride this wave of Trump mania or whatever, knowing how injurious it would be, and yet there are expedient political things that he needs to at least make visible that he's attending to without any expectation of being successful? Does he want this to come to a vote because it'll be resoundingly defeated, even if they're only given 10 hours to look at it? I mean, is that possible, or what is the end game to this?
Well, someone once explained this to me, and they did mean it, that when Democrats hold power in D.C., they work to form a coalition. They really focus on how do they get at least some Republicans on board with them so that they have a coalition. Republicans' concept is that doesn't matter at all. It's what legislation can we push through and sell later. And so as far as Mitch McConnell's viewpoint is, this is the one chance they have because he can see that there is great potential for Republicans to either lose the House or, it would be much more difficult to lose the Senate, but to lose the House or the Senate or both. And in even the best case scenario for Democrats for best case scenario for Republicans, they will have a much smaller grouping in the House, which would force, them to work with Democrats. So knowing that, he's looking at it like, I have to get what I can get right now. And the trick about D.C. is it's a lot easier to pass something than it is to pull it back. We forget that for decades, Republicans, for a while, tried to get rid of, all the way through the 80s, tried to get rid of Medicare. That was a big, and for a while, there was a big work on let's get rid of Social Security. Social Security is a scam. I mean, I grew up in that. But once it's there and set in stone, it's really hard to get rid of. So Republicans know that this is their one chance in their mind to get rid of ACA. And if they don't pull it off, then ACA is pretty well here to stay. And so they're going to push as hard as they can on this. I personally think if I'm them, go ahead, keep pushing, push for this, all day long, because I think that this backfires with the public. I think the public does not want this. They do not want the AHCA. And the harder they push for Trump care, which I'm full on with calling it Trump care. Once they call it Trump care, then they own it. In fact, at this point, here's the part that people don't realize: the Republicans have already sabotaged ACA by changing out the federal stipend function that paid out for your premium. So they've already damaged the ACA. Now the question is, are they going to be able to undo the ACA through a vote, or are they going to just keep chipping away at the financial underpinnings to it so that they can say, see, we told you this couldn't work, but the public is somewhat smart enough to realize, hey, well, wait a second, this was fine until you guys came in and started, mucking around with it. Yes, things needed fixed, but we didn't have these problems that we now have. So I think the Talk-A-Thon or whatever you want to call it, is just designed to point out that this is the first time the public has had any input at all. The only people providing it are Democrats, while Republicans, 13 men from mostly rural states, which I'm in a rural state, so I get that, but are shaping the policy. Well, that's not necessarily, open to the public. I think it also highlights a problem that we have electorally, and I think that's good, that Republicans have taken so much of these, what we think of as red states, these low population states that still have 2 senators, and that has become their bedrock. That's become we're guaranteed that we will always have at least X number of senators because these states aren't in contention, so we can try and ram this through. And I hope that wakes up a lot of Democrats to say, we really have to fight it out everywhere and see what happens.
Last, I heard this morning, I believe it's Weinstein who said they just need to peel off 3 more Republicans. Do we know who might be in the running to be those 3 Republicans?
To peel off and vote against this thing?
Right.
So I think the 3 that they're going to probably target most, aggressively will be Collins, Murkowski, and either Flake or Heller, because Heller is in a seriously bad spot in Nevada. His state went for Hillary. His popularity number is terrible. and this is one where he's got to figure out, he's up for re-election next year. So he's the one Republican who's really in a bind, and I think the press will hit him. Now, as far as Murkowski and Collins, they're both in states that don't want this, and frankly, they're in parties that barely tolerate them. Both of them support Planned Parenthood. They're the last of a dying breed of semi-pro-choice Republicans. They look at the ACA, which, Trump care, which comes out and just guts services to women. And I don't mean just, abortion. I'm talking about access to any care. I mean, regular exams, birth control, and they look at that as pretty punishing. And of course, they are considering those. So I think there's going to be some combination of those that they hope to get to a no. The Republican leadership is really pushing. Republican leadership sells the same narrative. The narrative that they sell to all moderates, whether they're running for a state house or for a federal race, is more to fear in a Republican primary than you do in a general. Because in a general, you've got us behind us, and in a Republican primary, the conservatives can come gunning for you, and they can take you out, and then how bad off is your state? Well, the problem is that last piece. How bad off is your state if you believe in moderates and we elect, real conservatives to take your place? Well, at a certain point, that gambit has got to play out, because the moderate has to step back and say, yeah, but if I keep voting for all this stuff, how different am I from that wild conservative you want to elect? But that's the threat that Republican leadership has used pretty successfully for years now, at every level, state house, federal, all the way. And we're going to have to find out whether or not it's still a threat that works.
Now, there's a lot of reportage on the Georgia Congressional 6, Handel and Ossoff. But there's another special election occurring in South Carolina's 5th that isn't as well known, but also matters. And coincidentally, it's Frank Underwood's district in the House of Cards. And this particular one pits Ralph Norman, former state representative, and Democratic Archie Parnell. And this is what I heard is one of the deepest red districts of all deep red districts, and we have absolutely no chance. But according to 538, it really matters.
Yeah, this is a district that presidents pick their candidates for cabinet positions and federal posts in large part based on, can we hold that seat if I pick one of my own? And this is a district that is, out of all the districts that we contested, Wyoming, Kansas, Georgia, and South Carolina, it's the second most what we consider out of reach, with Wyoming, first, and then Kansas third, and then Georgia fourth, at least from the map I have, and I've had people dispute that different ways. But so it's not one of those races where people looked at it and they said, boy, South Carolina 5th is one that can certainly trend our way. But one of the things that I really like about Archie is that Archie has run a very ground-oriented campaign. He's run a campaign not based a lot on, glossy ads and all of that, but a campaign based on really, let's see how many of our own voters we can turn out. And there are a lot of people inside of South Carolina who put a lot of effort into exactly that as a plan. And I think we're going to see whether or not, that works out, what happens next. And I think that whereas in Georgia, Georgia's race is one that we shouldn't be competitive in, but we are, and in fact could win. And that would be great. In South Carolina's race, it's a race where we really shouldn't be competitive. And if Archie can get this race if he can break Democratic performance numbers, which the last performance number I had showed Democrats typically getting about 36 to 37% of the vote. Well, if he breaks that, then, that's something that we can also crow about and just say, look, we broke the bank in a district that we should not have been, anywhere. So it's just a different metric that you evaluate races by.
And he's done this without really any money from the party.
Yeah, it's one where, there has been some national support, not as, of course, much as there was in Georgia 6, in part because the numbers. One of the things that we get to, and I want to see more national support everywhere, but one of the things that we have to do before we get to that point is you have to convince national donors that this is a smart race to invest in, because the problem is if you invest their money in these races and they aren't on board, then they come back later and just say, well, wait a second, I don't know how much money I want to give now because you put my money into a race that, you didn't think we could win. And whether or not that's fair or not, we don't get to decide what the donor thinks. And South Carolina 5 is a good chance with small money to try and find out how much impact huge glossy media campaigns have. Because if we see a significant uptake in that district without a huge, overwhelming, glossy media ad campaign, then it's going to send a message, I think, to a lot of Democrats that, hey, it doesn't always take millions and millions of dollars. All it takes is the right message and an aggressive, field and outreach and those kind of things. Now, that's one of the things that the consultant groups within, D.C. and even inside of the party have really opposed. And the reason why they've opposed is because, frankly, it doesn't make them enough money. They make money off, placing TV ads and putting together ad campaigns. Whereas if you run an aggressive field campaign, who are you paying? Well, you're paying the little guy. You're paying the person who's walking the doors. And so the consultants don't get all the money. But if Archie outperforms, and the greater by which he outperforms, so if he outperforms a little to a lot, but if he outperforms a lot, then it opens up a real discussion over how could money be more effectively spent. And I'm really hoping that Archie does really, really well. And it would make my day if there was a shocking upset there. Because either way, no matter what happens in South Carolina 5th, I think it opens up a discussion of, is more money the answer, or is a different way of doing this the answer? And I look forward to that discussion wholeheartedly.
We'll save the discussion about what Republicans get wrong about the social safety net probably for next week. But let's speak about something tangential to this. Now, there is a big schism in the Republican Party now between, I guess, the diehard Trump loyalists and I guess the Susan Collins, Murkowski part of the party.
Right.
Is this our opportunity to peel off those voters? Is Archie Parnelli, because he's not, he's not a Joe Manchin, but he's not a, I don't know, Alan Grayson either, right? So, but can we peel off those voters? Will they become Democrats, or is there such an institutional hatred of everything Democratic?
Well, I think what you're seeing is that more of the people in what we sometimes call the mushy middle, the independents who have, and I hate to say independents because in most states it's unaffiliated. They didn't choose a party. It's not as though they're like, I don't like either. It's like, they're more the group that has traditionally said, meh, I don't care either way. And that's the part a lot of people miss. I always see drives when people bring up third parties in those, and they'll say there's a huge independent movement. And I want to say, well, there's much more a movement for people who are just indifferent, which has kind of built up. And after an 8-year presidency, it really builds up. And I think that there are a lot of people who kind of checked out after Obama and just said, well, Obama did good, but, things are okay and whatever. And they're like, this and that. And Trump has managed to make a lot of those people who were the unaffiliated, well, things are okay, all of a sudden energized and involved because they've realized, hey, I didn't think this stuff could happen, and holy cow, what did we get ourselves into? And I'm seeing a lot of that, and I think that that's really positive for us in a lot of districts around the country.
Okay. Well, I just see some disaffection, and people are, softening their hardened attitudes. In small little ways. I mean, it's not anything that's an epiphany in any sense.
No, but I think people thought, hey, when Republicans get power, this and this will happen, and none of that has happened, and instead, a train wreck. So.
Yeah, I was putting it mildly. Train wreck and the Patriot, maybe. Hey, or Patriot games is what I'm thinking of. Listen, we'll just pick this up next week and meet and visit with you then. So thanks for today. Okay, folks, perfect. We're going to have to bug out of here. We're in our little buffer period between Hartman coming up about 6 minutes after the hour. We'll play Kilimanjaro by the Shaolin Afronauts to bide the time while dials are dialed and buttons are pushed. And so stay tuned. I should mention Randy Rhodes. You can't go your day without getting Randy Rhodes. And if you can't get her here, buy a stinking podcast.
Yeah.
All right. And she comes up on Netroots Radio at 1 p.m. on the West Coast, 4 p.m. on the East Coast live. So I would suggest continue listening to Netroots Radio 24/7, 365. And why? Well, because who loves you, baby? Okay, Wink. I will see you on the other side.
All right. We're out.